to record a brief video about this week's reading, Epicurus' letter to Menoecus, or Menoecus, however you want to pronounce it, it's not important. Epicurus was a contemporary of Plato, roughly, in the 4th century BC, so about 300 or 400 years before the birth of Christ is when Epicurus was flourishing as a philosopher. It's not really that important to know, except that, it's an old text. It's a text from the ancient world. So it's been translated from the Greek, and, there are all the attendant problems to that. I don't want to go through the text in any, look at it in any detail. If you look on my YouTube channel, perhaps, if you find it, you'll find other texts or other videos which go into more detail about the letter than this one. I just don't know how important that is. There's a couple of things I just wanted to say about the letter. First of all, the letter itself is a short work, but it's about more than death. I suppose that it's a letter of an older man to a younger man. Now, I don't know. I don't have any basis for saying that except that it reads like that, and it's giving somebody, a younger person, advice about how to live and especially how, one philosopher talking perhaps to a young person who's interested in philosophy. And there's a number of interesting things, obviously, that are said about how to live. And we get a sense of Epicurus's Epicureanism, which means his hedonism, or his belief that, as he says, pleasure is the alpha and omega, the beginning and end of our existence. That is, pleasure not restricted to the physical pleasure, but certainly, just including them to some extent. But that human life and human happiness are determined by our natural disposition to seek pleasure and to avoid pain and suffering. And that life should be lived on that basis, to maximize the amount of enjoyment, true enjoyment. Again, not just the enjoyments of the basic physical pleasures of things like eating and drinking and even sex, but rather the enjoyments and pleasures of the whole person, which would include intellectual pleasures too, the pleasures of philosophy, and all the different things that a human being is capable of doing and enjoying. But this letter for us, despite its richness in terms of, say, the philosophy of life that it proposes or describes, the interest for us in a class on death has to be on the few yet very important remarks that Epicurus makes, and you'll find them bunched together in the 3rd paragraph. The remarks that he makes specifically about the nature of death, and that is what we will be focusing on. That's the importance of Epicurus for this course. Certainly the other things relate to his theory of death or his philosophy of death, but certainly it's that philosophy of death or those remarks about death that we'll be concentrating on. And it may be that we start to use the word Epicurean, which of course has a larger meaning in our language, as somebody devoted to pleasure. In this class, sort of Epicurean is short for the Epicurean view of death. But what is that? Well, you'll read that. You'll find out. But basically, it seems to me that if we look at those few remarks, where he tells his young friend, death is nothing to us. It's nothing to us, and it should be nothing to us. But why is that? Why does he say that it's nothing to us? Well, it's not good and it's not bad. Okay? That is, to view death as a good thing or to view death as a bad thing would be to make a mistake, a basic logical mistake in either case. Death is nothing to us. Why is that? Well, think about it. Death is the end of us, he says. And he goes so far as to say specifically, it's the end of all awareness and sensation. In our translation, it says the privation of all awareness. Which means what? That death is the end or limit of our actual experience. Right? That is, that death is the taking away of all awareness and sensation. And what does that mean? Well, that if death is the limit or end of that process of me being a conscious being, then I certainly don't experience my own death, and I certainly don't suffer as a result of my own death. And he has a very powerful statement where he says that when we are, death has not come. And when death has come, we are not. That is, there's no overlap between my being and death, because death is the end or limit of my being. So to fear it or to welcome it would both be irrational, because death is not something that I experience. It's nothing to me. Literally, you might say, because I become nothing at the moment of death, or at the onset of death. So that death is not something that I can experience, because it means I don't exist anymore. It cannot be viewed as something bad or something to be feared from Epicurus' point of view. I mean, there's all sorts of things to fear in life, because they cause us to suffer, from physical ailments to emotional traumas to all the different things that legitimately we suffer because of. Well, Epicurus seems to be saying that death is not one of those things, because if you think it out, actually what death is, and especially you separate death from the process of dying, right, which can be quite painful and traumatic, but when we think about it, it's really a process that we go through in life, just at the end of life. It is not death, it is the part of life that leads up to death, and I think it's fully rational to say that that's not nothing to me, that's something that I'll experience. We all die in different ways, but the process leading up to death, that is dying, could very well be something that I experience, and it could be unpleasant. And then it would be fully rational to say it's something that I fear or dread, perhaps, but not death itself, not the phenomenon of the end of our existence, because that, in a way, really can't hurt us. So this notion, a very simple, maybe not so simple, but stated only in a few sentences there, a very powerful philosophy of death that Epicurus suggests for us. That death really is nothing to us, and he provides some pretty cogent reasons in his description of what death is to support that notion.